It's August 19th at just after 2 p.m. and I'm sitting with Garry Dowd in the library at the Diefenbunker. So maybe just to get started, could you talk a little bit about your job while you worked here at the bunker and when you worked here and that kind of stuff?
I was transferred here in July of 1963. During the period of 63 to 1970, I was employed in what we called a message center, a crypto office, and the Federal Warning Center over them 7 years in the rank of corporal. I came back in 1976 from serving 4 years in Afcent, Holland. And again, I was employed in the comm center for a short while because I was a master corporal then. And then I was employed in Strad, which was the automated switching system. And from there, I went into the crypto office and I was employed as the crypto custodian for the site. And I worked inside the vault. That's where I sat. That was my office. You know where the vault is? I sat inside the vault. Now, there used to be access to that vault, but you can't get into anymore. It's the RCMP designation. And it's a shame because the vault was a very significant part of this site. That's where all the top secret stuff was kept, all the codes. So for a year and a half, 2 years, I was employed there. I left here in 79 or 80, I'm not quite sure. I went on a year French course. Okay. I came back to Nix, which is down over the hill, the NATO site. Nix appears up on your wall here as a message slot. And I worked there. I was then I got my sergeant in between leaving Carp in 79, 80 until I came back to Nix and I was a warrant officer, a mini warrant officer, the first level of warrant officers. And I was employed there for a couple of years. I knew I was getting promoted to master warrant officer, didn't know when, so they sent me back to the bunker. And I was employed on shift work in Osaks then, and then I was given the job as operations warrant officer. And then one morning we had what they call a bug out, where everybody got called and you had to report in. It was like an exercise, a field exercise. So I don't know what happened, but I came in late, and that was not me. I got a lot of ribbing. Anyway, there was a debriefing by the commanding officer later that morning, and he said, I'd like to call to the attention of one warrant officer that came in late, and it's a good thing because he got promoted today to master warrant officer. So that was a real treat. So I stayed here for 2 or 3 more months and got transferred to Norfolk, Virginia. And that was my 7, 10, about 14 years within the bunker and with the NATO site down below the hill.
Okay. Before you were transferred in here, did you know what the site was about? Did you know much about it?
No. I was only a young signalman. I was in Petawawa. I was with a field squadron, 2 SIGs in Petawawa. I had no idea other than I wanted to get close here because my future wife was in what we now call Canada.
So when you first arrived on site, what was the experience like? What do you remember of that?
Well, we're talking back in the days when it was Army. You know, so you were still a soldier first and a tradesman second. So you still had to do your rifle drills and your parades and shine your shoes and all that stuff. The work was initially quite difficult because the first time I ever worked in a large message center. But after a while, you know, you went to Kingston on courses, so you got yourself upgraded to different levels of your trade, and it was great.
Did you live on site?
You had to live on site for 1 year. You could not live off, even though my parents lived just over from the Park and Ride in Canada on a farm. You could not live off. So I went to Jiggs McDougall. I could call him Jiggs now. He was a colonel I was my commanding officer. I said, "Sir," I said, "I want to live off site." He said, "Well, why?" He said, "The regulations say a year." I said, "Well, I'm marrying this girl." "Oh," he said. I said, "Can I bring my wife in here?" He said, "No," but he said, "I'll authorize you to live off site until you get married." Which he did. So I was out here, but I kept a room here. I was allowed to keep a room because after midnights, I found it better sleeping here than going home, and my dad would give me something to do, you see. So better to stay here and have a sleep. Yeah. That's the early years.
Yeah. And what do you remember most generally from your time, like sleeping over here and living in the bunker?
Camaraderie. Your buddies. Now, don't forget, there wasn't many women in the forces then. It was pretty well all guys. So the camaraderie of the family, of your military family, I cherished very much. As I got more senior in rank, I cherished it more because then I had that military family under me, and I worked harder to keep them taken care of. You know, yeah.
What was the security like at that time?
Security?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you had your military police, as I told the friend here with me. When you came out to the outer gate, there was an MP on duty. You picked up one card, and you walked in here, handed in that card, and got your card with your picture on it. And security, these guys had pistols on their hips. You know, it was a top secret base. You couldn't even tell your mother and father how many beds were in here. You know, that's the way it was. You said nothing about it. It was a top secret installation. Because initially, a lot of people maybe don't know this, but the older guys would. It was initially called EASE, Experimental Army Support Establishment. But I was not part of EASE. I was part of 1AS. I know you're going to laugh, but I was 1 Army Signal Squadron. Army Signal Squadron. So everybody I tell that, I get a little chuck on their face. And we were a subunit of the Cop Squadron in Ottawa, at the old Army headquarters in Ottawa. But we were 1AS here. EASE was our support unit, like they would supply the clerks and the medics and that kind of stuff. But we were separate to them. We provided their communications until eventually they gave us our own squadron name. We became 701 Cop Squadron. And then EASE sort of disappeared, and it became a communication installation. Yeah.
In the 1960s, do you remember anything about the food here?
About the which?
The food.
The food? Well, I was telling them downstairs, it was simply excellent. On midnight shift, we'd phone down and say, "I want my T-bone steak, medium rare." Because they had to keep fresh rations for 30 days, which meant they couldn't leave the steaks 30 days. They wouldn't be good, eh? So they fed us the best of the food. And the clam chowder, and it was just excellent food. And we didn't pay for it, because we were single. Single guys didn't pay. When I got married, of course, I had to pay for my meals, but they were next to nothing. I don't know why. I had no idea what they were. $1 for lunch, maybe $2 for supper. But that's back in the 60s, don't forget. You know, now it would be $10 or $11, I'm sure, you know. But it was great. The food was excellent.
You talked about the security a little bit, but you mentioned you couldn't talk to your parents.
No, you couldn't talk. You couldn't tell anybody what you even done.
Did anyone ever ask you?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. People asked you because they were inquisitive. My friends were, my aunt and uncles, my future wife's family. They all asked you, "Garry, what kind of bed you sleep in?" I said, "It's a bed." You know, and what's this like? What's the mess hall like? It's a mess hall. You know, that's all you could tell. It was very rigid, and it was the same not only here but all our bunkers, even the bunkers in England. My friend knows about them. They were the same thing. It was the Cold War, and we were just right into the Cold War. So hey, things were pretty serious when you're talking nuclear. Mm-hmm. You know, you never knew. You never knew. And the other thing was always in my mind when I got married, I might have to come in here and never see my wife again, or see my young baby boy, because you would have to report for duty. If there was a threat, you might never see them again. They'd be ashes. It was in your mind. It had to be, because that was the way things were put to you then. The Cold War was on, and the nuclear was very, It was upfront. Yeah.
Did you ever talk about that with your fellow employees and soldiers?
About, you mean fellow comrades?
Yeah, the people in the bunker.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure, we talked about it. But hey, you couldn't worry about it. You were a soldier. You wore the uniform. That's the way you're trained. You wear the uniform, you served your country. I don't know whether the guys feel about it today like that, but I guess they do.
Yeah. Do you feel that the whole fear of nuclear attack, do you feel that was real for people at that time?
I do.
General population?
I do. I think it was rare. I think it was real. Sure. It wasn't that long after Nagasaki or Hiroshima, and we're right into the tough Cold War. Yeah, it was a mindset back then. Not so much now. We have other things to worry about now, terrorists and that, but I think it was a mindset. I think it was real in people's minds. It was real in our minds, but we never talked about it. We used to be a movie called Nuclear Roof. I'm sure you still got it on site. And I was a Bell and Howell trained technician. So I sometimes, for visiting dignitaries, would have to go down to the main, is the conference room, the third level there, and show this movie to the visiting dignitaries. It got so old after a while, I'd say, hey, you got to do something with this movie because it's scratchy and the voices are getting crazy here, You got to update it. It's not telling the story, Nuclear Roof, I remember that. Unbelievable. Just like yesterday.
Did you feel reassured then, knowing that the bunker was here and that the government had made these provisions, or was that more worrying for you or for the general population, do you think?
That's a hard question. I'm not sure what the answer would be. As I say, we're all young soldiers. We would be reassured if we were in a foxhole. It was your duty. I was transferred here. So it was a duty I was going to carry out, whether I had to stay here or I left or whatever. I was getting married. I was a young man. 63, I was 21. Whew, no gray hair, no white hair, nothing. Young man. There's Derek laughing in the background. But it's true. And he'd say the same thing. He was Air Force minded, but we were all committed to our duty. Didn't matter whether it was here or in an airplane or in a ship or in a bunker. It didn't matter. I mean, a bunker outside, like a soil bunker. We didn't talk much about it then. I don't think we did. It's a long time ago now. Like when I come back in my later transfers, the threat was gone, really. In the 80s and that, the threat was gone. It was in the 63 to 70 that the threat was there, more so than the later years. But we didn't talk about it much. No.
That idea of the threat being gone, did that affect operations in the bunker at all?
Not at all. Not at all. Operations got better because the equipment improved, the technology improved, and communications got better. When I finally got back into OSACs, wow, look at this setup. Air conditioned. Wow, cool in there. You could work, and everything was on magnetic tape, and it was super. Oh, yeah.
What did you know and think about the Soviet Union, especially in those earlier years?
They're my enemy. They were my enemy. Period. Of course they were. All of the East was my enemy.
Was that an army mindset, do you think, or a general population thing?
I think it was a mindset of a soldier or an airman or a sailor. We're wearing uniform to fight the enemy, right? And to defend our country, and the enemy then was them, right? Plus other, but mainly the Russians. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Do you remember any specific, I don't know if you do, but any specific media stories from the time that would be sort of
media stories?
Yeah.
Didn't read the paper then. There wasn't a thing for me. Now I do because I read the obituaries. So I get and the sports pages. Then I don't think I ever picked up a paper other than to look at sports maybe, but to read headlines and that. My mother did, I guess. She used to talk about different things going on in the world and with the Russians and that kind of stuff. But no, I sometimes you pick the paper up on a midnight shift, but not really. You pick up a pocketbook. You play cards, Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Were you here when Kennedy was assassinated?
Yes. Yeah. I was put on standby. The whole bunker was put on standby. In fact, I was sitting in my wife's parents' house, I think, and they had the phone number, and they phoned me and said they could report back to me within 1 hour. We're all put on standby. We didn't know what was going on until we got in, because you didn't know what was going to happen. Was it going to be a war? We didn't know. Could have been. You know? Oh yeah. I come in, kissed my wife goodbye, and hugged my son. Away I went. Wow, eh? It's the mindset again, though. King and country, or queen and country. You know? Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Wow, holy smokes, eh? Yeah.
Sort of change tones a little bit. What was the social tone like in the bunker?
The social? What do you mean the social?
Like, did you come in and was it so you'd come in and do your job, go home to your wife, or
The married man did.
Yeah.
The single guy, well, after I could live out, I went home. But before that, you go down, you'd play shuffleboard or whatever, or go to your room, or do your washing, or do your ironing, or do your boots and shoes, clean your weapon, whatever, you know. And yeah, there was no really social life. The lounge was open to you, especially 63 to 70. We had no access to beer inside here. In later years, we did at the canteen. That canteen didn't come into existence till my second tour, I think. The 76 to 79 one. There was no canteen. We had to go to the mess outside. Yeah, but there was really no social life that I can remember other than the ping pong. But we didn't need a lot. You played cards a lot then and sat around, talked, watched TV, you know.
So
or went out.
Yeah.
Went out. Guys went out to Almont or Carlton Place or played ball in the summertime, played hockey in the winter with the locals. We always put a team out. You know, Winter Carnival in the winter.
Yeah. Winter Carnival was on then.
Oh, we always have Winter Carnival in the wintertime here. I got some good glass beer mugs with the crust on it.
So it was on during your first tour then as well?
The Winter Carnival?
Yeah.
I'm sure it was. Yeah, I'm sure it was. Because when I went on to my next transfer up north, they were having Winter Carnival in 70, 71. Yeah, I'm sure it was. Yeah, we always have Winter Carnival here. Good times. Tobogganing and all that stuff and races. And yeah. That was a good social event for the troops, you know, because then you could get out there and shove the officer right into the snowbank sort of thing. You couldn't do anything because you'd be running off somewhere. Yeah. We had great fun that way.
Yeah.
And they took it well, you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was that, do you think, helped by the fact that the mess outside was an all-ranks mess? Was that different?
It was better to have an all-ranks mess. It's different when you have your regiments, like the Patricias or the Van Deus, where you have 1,000 men, then you need your separate messes. But when you have a smaller contingent, like maybe 5 officers, maybe 20 senior NCOs, and the rest all, you know, you bring them all together. The all-ranks mess worked because what happened in the mess stayed in the mess. You know, if there was a problem, then if I was the supervisor in charge, I would talk to that man on a Monday morning. And I would say, it's not going to happen again, is it? You know, things like that. But there's normally a lot of problems. It worked well. If you didn't like an officer, you just didn't talk to him. He drank alone. He finally smartened up, you know, and started talking to you or whatever, or left, didn't come back. Yeah. That was fine. Yeah. You know.
Did you know everyone in the bunker?
Oh, sure, you would back then. Oh, yeah, you would. Pretty well. Yeah, I guess you would, sure. Now, some you wouldn't see for a long time because of the shift work. If they worked different shifts to you, you wouldn't see maybe your buddy for a month or more because he'd be working a different shift than you. Yeah.
This was something I thought of earlier. I forgot to ask, but you said you'd have to leave your wife and family if there was an emergency. How do you think your wife and family felt about that? Did you ever talk about it within your family?
Early on, I guess my wife was fortunate because her family was here. You know, she wasn't a girl from Saskatchewan that left her family there. Her family, all her relatives were here, and my family was here. But she had worries, of course she did, because she never knew when she kissed me goodbye. That would be the last time. You just didn't know back then about what was going to happen in your life. But of course, it could have been anything. It could be a car accident. It could be anything sort of thing. It could be an accident on the rifle range, you know. But we used to have lots of bug outs where you got a call, you had to come in, but they were exercise. They weren't anything serious, you know. You were just preparing for the big one, you know. Mm-hmm.
Are there any stories from your time in the bunker that you like to tell, or stories maybe that you told on your informal tour?
Stories?
Yeah, like stories of like memories, like, oh yeah, I remember.
Oh, I remember when the Prime Minister, Elliot Trudeau, came in. I was the troop sergeant or troop, can't remember what rank I was holding, but anyway, I was out with the troops and they were all formed up. And when his helicopter landed, there used to be buildings along the lip of the hill there. It blew a couple of them over the hill. The back wash off the blades. Of course, I had to tell my people, don't you dare laugh. The Prime Minister is here. Don't you dare snicker or laugh. And you're so hard to hold it, you know. Things like that. Or sometimes you used to, on a midnight shift, it wasn't really busy. You go have a little sleep on the 4th level from the message center and them rooms. So I did one night. And there was one guy, I won't mention his name, anyway, took my pants. Because you would never sleep in your pants because the press would be all gone out of them, eh? So they said they wouldn't themselves, they're not going to wake Garry up. So here I am, I woke up late and people are starting to come into work. I had these boxer shorts on with Valentines on them. Here I am walking down the hall and the commanding officer comes in. He said, Dowd, what is going on? I said, somebody, I used a bad word, somebody blank stole my pants. But he took it in great humor. You know, the CO at the time then took it in great humor. Some would have put me in jail, but it was a good humor. There were lots of things, stories. One guy had a very, very queasy stomach. I could see him now. And we sat one day down in the mess hall, and there was 4 of us at the table. And you know that rubber stuff at the top of the foolscap pad that you tear off? Well, this guy happened to look up, and the other guy had it sticking out of his nose. He took off, bumped into a lot of people, finally made it to the washroom, that sort of stuff. We're always joking with each other. You know, the camaraderie. It was the fun part. There was serious part. There was fun part. We had a Governor General come in, Roland Missioner. He was a fine gentleman. I was working that night in the Federal Warning Center as a corporal. He came in, actually sat down, and he said, to your people, he said, if you're not real busy, he said, just sit down, let's talk. He was a nice man, Roland Missioner. Yeah, of course, he was a military man. You know, I always believe the Governor General should be a military man, but hasn't been for a while. Yeah, a lot of things happen. That's a few of the stories. Yeah.
What was the atmosphere like in the bunker with these VIP tours, like Trudeau? And
you always had to get ready for them, but we were always shipshape anyway. We were always ready to go, you know. It just meant get out of their way, you know, stay hidden, you know, because they'll ask you a question you can't answer or something. Eh? So, you know, you just took off. Yeah, there was no problem. You got them everywhere in your life. Even in civilian life, you get that, you know, touring the plant or doing whatever. So a little more in the military because you had to spit you on your shoes and look sharp and don't say the embarrassing or don't ask the embarrassing question. You know.
I just noticed from the years that you were working, your second tour, I guess, there would have been women who came into the bunker. Did that change things at all?
Was there women? It must have been women. Yes, there was. Yes, a very. That was really a sad time for me. Them 3 years because I worked with a lady. She was the same rank as me, and we were both supervisors. And it ended up that she died a couple of years later. She had so much arthritis in her body. You couldn't even, it wasn't vitamin gel, it was just total arthritis in every joint. You couldn't even touch her. And poor Kathy, she died a couple of years later, left a husband who worked here. He was a sergeant. And yeah, we had some good people. Sad times, good times, you know, things happen. Yeah. We had reservists too. I remember 76, 79 would come in to sort of augment us. if we're getting short of staff, and the reserves always needed training, the communication reserves. So they'd come in, they send in females and that. They were willing to learn and that, they took the regulars were the guys that knew it, so accept our word and this is the training you're going to get. Mm-hmm.
There's just like a sort of a couple of wrap up.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Questions. But why would you say it's important to remember the Cold War and your experiences in particular?
Why would I which?
Say it's important to remember them.
Remember about why you should remember the Cold War?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't really know. What do you think, Derek, on that one? Why? Yeah, exactly right. So it shouldn't happen again. You must remember that the threat, there's always a threat. Even the threat today, I think, is more severe than it was in the Cold War, because you have races of people that don't care if they die or not, or get killed. They're terrorists, and I'm not going to mention who they are. You more know as well as I do who they are. I'm not going to get into that, but I think the threat is more, it's not a Cold War threat, it's a terrorist threat. And that is the problem of going into crowds today and not feeling secure. I don't go into a lot of crowds anymore. And if I do, I keep myself very observing of the people around me. And I didn't have to do that in the Cold War. You knew who your enemy was. You don't today. You must always remember it. It's a different world today, and a more serious one. I worry all the time about my grandchildren and what's going to follow after them.
Yeah.
We're very lucky in this country that nothing has happened, but don't think it can't.